Should you choose Xeon or Intel Core-based processors for your next NAS? Okay, so straight off the bat, let's get one thing out of the way. Where did this video come from? Nice and simple, because this isn't the first time this question's been asked. But if you look around and look for the comparisons between, your i3, your i5s, your i7s, and modern Xeon-based CPUs in NAS, there isn't actually a lot of content out there. And that's because this isn't a subject that's explored very much. In fact, this video stems from a conversation I was having with someone at Acer store regarding the use of Xeons versus the use of i5s and i7s in NAS, because there are lots of arguments for using one or either inside a network attached storage device, and one look at a lot of the lineup from big NAS vendors out there will show you that they are definitely picking a lane. Whether it's Synology, QNAP, Acer Store, TerraMaster, they're all kind of choosing which side of the seesaw they want to live on for the rest of their products. Now, I'm of course talking about business products. It's probably very important to bear in mind that the solutions I'm talking about today are going to be ones that you're looking at spending minimum $1,000, maybe even 15 to 2,000 without buying hard drives. On top of that, I am talking about solutions that throughput is king. When I am talking about these two devices, regardless of whatever field you are in terms of enterprise and business and what you want from your network attached storage, chances are what you want is some kind of data very, very quickly. But it's the type of data that makes all the difference. The last thing I should touch on is the reason I'm going for the tippity top side of things, your enterprise business, your rack mounts, your 8 and 10 bays and above, is because everything under that always has a home or small medium business or SMB feeling about it, and that's where you see the lines blur a great deal. That's when you see a lot more Celerons and Pentiums, those sort of chips that give a little bit of everything because the target audience is so diverse. You can have every single kind of SMB and home user all buying the same kind of 4-bay, so they have to kind of cater for everyone. So I'm not really looking at those solutions. I am looking at the top tier, and with this near 2-minute disclaimer out the way, let's get to the meat of the discussion. Let's talk about these two CPUs and why you would pick one over the other. Because whether you're looking at a brand new NAS in 2020 with a Xeon or an Intel Core-based CPU, you are looking at a powerful NAS. Regardless of which one of these two you go for, if you are buying a NAS brand product, if you're looking at a NAS from a respective NAS brand offerings, an Intel or Core-based CPU will give you top-tier performance in pretty much everything they're putting out there. So whatever their collaboration suites, their first-party apps, or third-party applications, you are going to get the best performance possible whether you go for each one of these CPUs. However, after that, things can really make a difference. So first off, let's talk about Xeon. Why would a user want a NAS with a Xeon-based CPU? And right now, they seem to be the dominating processor when it comes to business-level devices. Xeon-based CPUs have got a number of advantages over the Core series. So first and foremost, the number of cores that Xeons arrive in is ridiculous. I mean, you can start easy and go for a number of quad-core based Xeons that are quite affordable indeed. In fact, in terms of that kind of 4-core setup, they are definitely lower in price than the likes of your i7 8th and 9th generation core-based CPUs. But with Xeon-based processors, you can go 4, 6, 8, 12, all the way up to 18 and more cores inside that CPU. And you've got NASs out there that have multiple Xeon processors inside. So you're looking at an insane amount of power. I'm looking at you, Synology. On top of that, with these processors, they have a greater support and indeed full support of error correction, both in terms of the memory and with hyper-threading at a better price point internally of this processor. These are things that business users that are running file transitions between hundreds of sites or hundreds of users simultaneously, where that data has to be perfect every time. A Xeon-based processor is incredibly attractive, and with a lower damage point in terms of the cost of production, like for like anyway, a Xeon-based processor is very appealing to both the end user and the manufacturer's point of view. However, there are some industries where a Xeon processor is less effective, and there are areas where a Xeon processor will actually be a little bit more of a stumbling block, and that leads me into the advantages of the Core series. I am talking about your i3s, i5s, and i7s, and even i9, because although we haven't seen a commercially available i9 processor yet, I don't think a commercially available NAS at least to feature them, I don't think it's going to be that much longer. Now, when I'm talking about Intel-based processors, I am predominantly talking about QNAP NAS. Another NAS brand, Acer Store, they are heavily favouring Xeon-based processors in 2019 and 2020, but they did still have on the books some Intel Core-based solutions. But it looks to me like these things are getting phased back, and something that I discussed with the chap at Asus. But with regard to the Intel Core series, their advantages are a little bit more bespoke. Now, first and foremost, they are graphically enabled. The integrated graphics performance and inclusions of all of these i3, i5 and i9 based processors is genuinely impressive. I mean, often you are challenging mid-range graphics cards, and if you are looking for 4K transcoding, and I'm talking real high-end transcoding, you will get far better performance out of a Core series based processor. Don't get me wrong, Xeons can convert and transcode files, but they are doing it with raw CPU power, whereas Intel Core based processors have got integrated graphics which will offset the workload, and therefore CPU utilization will dip accordingly. Think about a PC that's going to run a game where you've either got a powerful PC or a mid-range PC with a high-end graphics card. The PC with the high-end graphics card will be able to offset and offload a lot of that workload to the GPU, whereas the power PC without it will have to use raw CPU power in order to do the task. And if you are running in any kind of content creation, post-production and more, you will get better NAS performance per task utilizing a core-based CPU. On top of that, Intel Core-based CPUs enable a number of graphically connected NAS advantages. So, for example, if you look at HDMI-enabled NASs, you will almost always find HDMI on Intel Core-based NASs. The reason being that you can output high 60 frames per second 1080p and 4K in modern versions at 60 frames per second. Now, that is going to be very useful to people that like to enjoy their data in a visual way and a more graphically encoded way locally. And it's that word, locally, because a number of you who use NASs for, say, surveillance will take advantage of this feature to have a standalone surveillance solution with a keyboard, video, and video monitor and mouse connected to a NAS for a standalone surveillance outlook, while utilizing network cameras as well to have worldwide or just local network access. This is something that a Xeon can't do, and why you will almost never see Xeon-powered NASs with an HDMI port. Now, that doesn't completely remove graphical manipulation. In fact, when you look at some of the 2019 release Xeon solutions with PCIe, they have got a number of solutions that have Xeon processors but support graphics cards, which is quite a middle ground, because although core-based CPUs cost more money overall, once you compare them like for like, I'm not going to compare a 4-core i7 versus a 12-core Xeon, that would be madness. But it's still worth highlighting that having the flexibility to do both shouldn't be overlooked, because QNAP are kind of currently alone in this. They are providing solutions that are Intel Core and Xeon, and a lot of their power devices, such as the 83 series, arrive with Xeon processors, while they're still championing in the 72 XT series a lot of the i3, i5, and even i7 processors. But because they're alone in this, all the other NAS brands think the wind is changing towards Xeon use. And you can see their point, because the people that are going to utilize the i3, i5, and i7 in its advantageous way are small. Their piece of the pie is small. And Synology, Acer Store, TerraMaster, Netgear, all of these companies are looking at the broader picture. So which CPU should you be using? Is this a case that if you're going to buy your next NAS, should you be looking at the CPU or really what you're going to use it for? Because if you're running loads of tasks simultaneously with multiple users across multiple sites, taking advantage of 10 GBE to transmit individual files very quickly, without hesitation, I would recommend a Xeon-based processor in your NAS. As well as that, if you are going to be running a single NAS within a single local area network with 10 GBE or 5 GBE or 2.5 GBE in 2020, then there's a very good chance that a Xeon-based NAS will be best for you and your backups. But if you're looking at surveillance, if you're using graphical files and large, uncompressed or even compressed video files, if you're going to be taking advantage of virtual machines on the proprietary software as opposed to using the NAS for virtual machines purely as a target or a LUN, then Intel core-based processors still have a place in the world. And although we are starting to see Thunderbolt NAS devices, generally the kind of area of graphic manipulators and post-production, those Thunderbolt devices are now starting to appear with Xeon processors too. There's an argument that right now, if you're going to take advantage of graphical needs, go for the core series, but not forever. But we've got the rest of the year to talk about that, and maybe things are going to change things up. And remember, there are still solutions out there that take advantage of Xeon processors and have graphics cards, and that is an important distinction and something you might want to take advantage of. So I hope this video has helped. And that's been a bit vague, but let's face it, this is a broad subject, and NAS is so very niche. So do let me know what you think or what you ended up going for. Maybe there's a point I missed that I can add to the NAS Compare article. Add it in the description. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Click like if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe to learn more, and I'll see you next time.